The space station floated in the darkness between stars. It was called Threshold, and it was the largest military base in this part of the galaxy. Ships came and went every hour. Soldiers from 12 different alien species walked through its metal hallways. They were all here for one reason. War was coming. In the central briefing room, lights flickered on massive screens. Maps showed enemy positions. Numbers showed how many soldiers each species had brought. Officers talked in small groups, their translators turning strange sounds into words everyone could understand. Commander Voreth stood near the main screen. He was tall, almost 3 meters from the ground to the top of his head. His body was covered in hard, shiny plates like armor. He had 4 eyes, and all of them were watching the room. Voreth belonged to the Kalani, a species known for being the best warriors in the Alliance. They were strong. They were fast. They had never lost a war today. Voreth was not happy. He looked at the corner of the room where a small group sat apart from everyone else. There were 12 of them. Humans, the newest species to join the Alliance. They were small and soft, with no natural armor and no claws. Their bodies looked weak, like they would break in a real fight. One of them caught his attention. An older male with gray in his hair and lines on his face. His uniform showed many marks of rank. Sergeant Major Park Taiho. The human was holding a small screen and showing it to the younger soldiers around him. A female called Kim Yuna and a male called Lee Dong-hee leaned close to see. Lieutenant Brix walked up to Voreth. Brix was Sorvani, a reptile-like species with green scales and sharp teeth. His yellow eyes followed Voreth's gaze to the humans. "Wait, what are they doing?" Brix asked. Voreth made a clicking sound with his mouth. It meant he was annoyed. Reading their stories. Their mythology. Stories. Before a military briefing? Yes. Voreth turned his 4 eyes to Brix. I studied their species before they arrived. Do you know what I found? They are obsessed with old tales. Legends of warriors from their past. Impossible stories about men who fought whole armies alone. Tales of soldiers who died rather than run away, Brix hissed, which was how his species laughed. And they believe these things happened? They teach them to their young ones. Every human child grows up hearing these stories. They memorize them. They celebrate them. Voreth shook his head slowly. It is primitive. Like something from a species that has not yet discovered science. Perhaps it helps them feel brave. Perhaps it makes them stupid. Voreth's voice was hard. In real war, there are no heroes. There are only numbers. How many soldiers? How many weapons? How strong? How fast? How well trained? The Kalani have conquered 40 worlds because we understand this truth. Humans have barely left their own planet. What do they know about real combat? Across the room, Sergeant Major Park Taiho could hear every word. The translator in his ear was very good. It caught the sneering tone in Voreth's voice. It caught the laughter from Brix. Taiho did not react. His face stayed calm. He had been a soldier for 30 years. He had fought in conflicts that these aliens knew nothing about. He had seen young men and women do impossible things because they believed they could. Because they had grown up on stories that told them they must tithe it. Yuna leaned closer to him. She was young, only 22. This was her first time away from Earth. Sergeant Major, should we say something to them? They are mocking us. No. Taiho's voice was quiet and steady. Let them talk. Corporal Dong-hee frowned. He was 25, strong for a human, but still small compared to every other species in the room. It is disrespectful. We came here to fight beside them, and they treat us like children. They do not know any better. Taiho looked at his datapad again. On the screen was an old painting. It showed 300 soldiers standing at a narrow pass between mountains. Behind them was their homeland. In front of them was an army of over 100,000 enemies. They measure strength in muscles and armor. They have never seen what belief can do. Yuna looked at the painting. Thermopylae? Yes. 300 Spartans held that pass for 3 days, against an army that should have crushed them in minutes. Taiho smiled. just a little. Every human knows this story. Every human child learns what it means. What does it mean, Sergeant Major? It means that death is not the worst thing. Running away is worse. Giving up is worse. He put the datapad down. The Kalani think we are weak because we are soft. They do not understand that humans have been soft for 10,000 years. If being soft made us weak, we would have died long ago. Across the room, Commander Vorith was still talking to Bricks. I will put them at the back of the formation. Let them guard our retreat route. They will be out of the way there. If real fighting starts, I do not want to waste time protecting them. Wise choice, Bricks agreed. Better to keep them safe where they cannot cause problems. Vorith looked at the humans one more time. The old one Taiho met his gaze. For a moment, Vorith felt something strange. The human's eyes were not angry or afraid. They were patient. Like he knew something Vorath did not. Vorath turned away. It was probably nothing. Humans were emotional creatures. They saw meaning in everything, even when there was none. The briefing began. Officers explained the mission. They would land on the moon below, travel through crystal canyons, and destroy an enemy outpost. Simple. The humans listened quietly, asked no questions, and followed orders to position themselves at the rear of the formation. Vorath felt satisfied. Everything was under control. The Kalani would lead, as they always did. The humans would watch and learn if they were lucky. He did not know that in 12 hours, everything he believed about strength would be destroyed. He did not know that the small, soft creatures he had dismissed would teach him a lesson written in blood and fire. He did not know that he was about to learn. Why humans told stories about impossible victories, because sometimes the impossible was exactly what humans did best. The surface of Vera-7 was strange and beautiful. Giant crystals grew from the ground like frozen trees. They were purple and blue and green, and they caught the light of distant stars. The crystals made the land look like something from a dream. But this was not a dream. This was war. 40 soldiers moved through the crystal canyons in careful formation. Kalani warriors led the way. Their hard bodies could take damage that would kill other species. Behind them came the Sorvani, their scales changing color to match the rocks around them. Then came soldiers from 3 other species, each with their own strengths. At the very back walked the 12 humans. Commander Vorath had given them simple orders before they left the ship. Stay behind everyone else. Guard the retreat path. Do not get in the way. His 4 eyes had looked at Sergeant Major Taiho when he said this. Try not to get lost reading your storybooks. Some of the other officers had laughed. Taiho had said nothing. He just nodded and led his team to their position. Now they walked through the canyon, weapons ready. Private Yuna stayed close to Taiho. Her rifle was heavy in her hands, but she had trained with it for 2 years. She knew how to use it. Sergeant Major, she said quietly, do you think we will see combat today? Taiho scanned the crystal formations around them. His eyes moved constantly, checking every shadow, every corner. Yes. How do you know? Because everything is too quiet. The enemy knows we are here. He looked up at the crystals. Some of them were tall enough to hide a ship behind. They are waiting. Corporal Dong-hee moved up beside them. The Kalani seem confident. Their commander thinks this will be easy. The Kalani have never fought an enemy that uses patience. Taiho's voice was calm. They win through strength and speed. But the Hollow Fleet is different. They use machines, drones. They do not care about losses. They care about victory. As if hearing his words, the world exploded. The first blast came from beneath the ground. A Kalani soldier disappeared in a flash of fire. Then came more blasts, dozens of them, as the crystal formations around them came alive with movement. Drones, hundreds of them. They poured out of hiding places everywhere. Small flying machines with weapons that fired beams of burning light. They made a terrible sound, like metal screaming. Commander Vorath shouted orders. His soldiers fired back. For a moment, it seemed like they might hold. The Kalani were strong. The Sorvani were fast. They destroyed drone after drone, but more kept coming. There are too many. Lieutenant Brix shouted. Green blood ran down his arm where a plasma beam had burned through his scales. Commander, we must retreat. Voreth looked around. The canyon had become a trap. Drones blocked the way forward. More drones blocked the sides. The only path open was the one behind them, where the humans stood.
Fall back,
Voreth commanded. Retreat to the extraction point. The soldiers began to run. The Kalani carried their wounded. The Sorvani helped those who could not walk. They moved as fast as they could toward the narrow gap at the back of the canyon. Then they saw the drones rising from behind that gap too. Brix fell to his knees. His yellow eyes showed despair. We are trapped. They are everywhere. There is no way out. Voreth felt fear for the first time in 50 years of war. This was not a battle anymore. This was an execution. The drones would kill them all one by one, and there was nothing his strength could do to stop it. Then a voice came through his. Translator. Human. Calm. Impossibly calm. There is always a way. Sergeant Major Park Taiho stepped forward. He walked past the frightened alien soldiers like he was taking a morning walk. His rifle was in his hands. His eyes were on the drones rising ahead. Behind him, the other 11 humans formed a line. They spread out across the narrowest point of the canyon, where the crystal walls came close together. Private Yuna took position on the left. Corporal Dong He took the right. The others filled the spaces between. All alien forces, Taiho said through the com channel, move behind us. We will hold this gap. Voreth's translator made a strange sound, like it did not know how to process the words. What? Hold the gap. There are hundreds of drones coming. 12 of you cannot stop them. Taiho turned his head slightly, and Voreth saw his eyes. They were not afraid. They were not desperate. They looked like the eyes of someone who had already made peace with what was about to happen. We cannot stop them, but we can slow them down. Long enough for you to call for help. Long enough for your ships to arrive. That is suicide. Taiho smiled. It was a strange smile. Sad and proud at the same time. Commander, let me tell you about a place called Thermopylae. I do not know what that is. It was a narrow pass on our world, thousands of years ago. 300 soldiers stood there against an army of over 100,000. They held that pass for 3 days. Every single one of them died. Taiho checked his weapon. But because of those 3 days, their people had time to prepare. Their people survived. Their people won the war. The drones were getting closer. Their weapons started firing. Plasma beams hissed through the air. Corporal Dong He loaded a fresh power cell into his rifle. Just like the old stories, Sergeant Major? Exactly like the old stories. Taiho raised his weapon. Today, we are the 300. Today we hold the pass. Private Yuna took a deep breath. She was scared. Her hands were shaking. But somewhere in her heart, she felt something else too. Something warm. She thought about her grandmother, who had told her stories of Korean warriors who never surrendered. She thought about Admiral Yi, who defeated 400 ships with only 13. She stopped shaking. For everyone behind us, she said. Taiho nodded. For everyone behind us? The humans opened fire. The first wave of drones came fast. They flew low through the canyon, their weapons glowing with deadly light. There were at least 50 of them, moving together like birds in a storm. Sergeant Major Taiho did not panic. He had faced worse odds before. His voice came through the com channel, steady and clear. Wait for my signal. Let them get close. Make every shot count. The humans waited. The drones came closer. Closer. The alien soldiers behind them watched in horror, expecting to see the humans torn apart at any moment. Now, 12 rifles fired at once. The sound was like thunder in the narrow canyon. Drones exploded in the air. Pieces of metal rained down on the crystal ground. When the smoke cleared, more than 30 drones had fallen, but more were coming. Always more. Private Yuna aimed and fired. Aimed and fired. Each shot found its target. She had spent hundreds of hours training for this. Her drill instructors had told her that one day her practice would save her life. They were right. A plasma beam hit her shoulder. The pain was terrible, like fire burning through her skin. She screamed, but did not fall. Instead, she switched her rifle to her other hand and kept shooting. Corporal Dong-hee saw her get hit. "Yuna, I am fine." She was not fine. Blood was running down her arm, but she was still standing. "Still fighting? Focus on your side." Dong-hee turned back to the drones coming from the right. His rifle was getting hot from continuous fire. The metal burned his hands through his gloves. He did not care. He had grown up hearing stories about soldiers who held their positions no matter what. Now he was living one of those stories. Commander Vorath stood behind a crystal formation, watching the humans fight. He could not believe what he was seeing. These creatures, these small soft beings that he had dismissed as weak, were fighting like animals. No, not animals. Animals knew when to run. The humans seemed to have forgotten that running was possible. Lieutenant Brix crawled up beside him. The Servani's wounds were bad, but he could not look away from the battle. "Commander, look at them. They should be dead by now." "Why are they not dead?" Vorath had no answer. On the front line, Sergeant Major Tai-ho moved between his soldiers, directing the battle like a conductor leading music. His voice never rose, never showed fear. When one soldier ran low on ammunition, he was there with more. When another soldier fell, he pulled them back and put someone else in their place. Private Han Minji, watch the left. They are trying to go around us. Minji was young, only 20 years old, but she moved like she had been born for this moment. She turned and fired 3 perfect shots, dropping 3 drones that had tried to sneak past. "Sergeant Oh Sunwoo, conserve your ammunition. Single shots only." Sunwoo nodded and slowed his fire, making each bullet count. The drones kept coming. The second wave. The third wave. The fourth. Each wave was larger than the last. Each wave pushed closer before the humans drove them back. Corporal Dong-hee's rifle finally stopped working. The heat had melted something inside. He threw it away and drew his combat knife. "Dong-hee, fall back," Tai-ho shouted. "Take a weapon from someone who fell." "No time, Sergeant Major." Dong-hee could see a group of drones breaking through on his side. If they got past him, they would reach the aliens behind. He could not let that happen. He charged. The aliens watching could not understand what they were seeing. A single human, armed with nothing but a small blade, running toward flying machines with plasma weapons. It made no sense. It was impossible. Dong-hee jumped and grabbed the nearest drone. He stabbed his knife into its body again and again. The drone crashed to the ground. He jumped to the next one, and the next. His body was burned and bleeding, but he did not stop. For 11 minutes, he held that side alone. When he finally fell, he had destroyed over 40 drones with nothing but a knife and his bare hands. His body lay among the broken machines, a smile still on his face. Private Yuna saw him fall. Something broke inside her, something that had been holding back her fear and pain. But instead of crying, instead of giving up, she felt a strange warmth spread through her. She thought about the stories, the ones her grandmother told her when she was small. Stories about Korean soldiers who fought even when victory was impossible. Stories about people who chose death before dishonor. She had always wondered how those people felt in their final moments. Now she knew. They felt proud. They felt free. She pulled the grenades from her belt. 3 of them. "All she had left? Sergeant Major," she said through the cum. "Thank you for everything." Wait, she was already running. A large group of drones had gathered for another attack. She ran straight into them, pressed the buttons on all 3 grenades, and held on tight. The explosion was bright enough to see from orbit. When the light faded, Yuna was gone. The battle continued. One by one, the humans fell. Each one took dozens of drones with them. Each one fought until their bodies simply could not fight anymore. When the last drone finally stopped moving, only 3 humans remained standing. Sergeant Major Tai-ho, Private Han Minji, Sergeant Oh Sun-woo. All three were wounded. All three were covered in blood. The canyon was quiet. The ground was covered with broken machines and fallen heroes. Commander Vorath walked forward on shaking legs. His armor was dirty. His four eyes were wet with something his species rarely showed. Tears. How? His voice was barely a whisper. How is this possible? Sergeant Major Taiho lowered his weapon slowly. His face was pale from blood loss. His hands were burned, but his eyes were still calm. Still patient? You asked about our myths, Commander? He sat down heavily against a crystal wall. Let me tell you what they really are. The rescue ships arrived 1 hour after the battle ended. Medical teams rushed into the canyon. They found alien soldiers who were hurt but alive. They found humans who had given everything. 7 humans died that day. Private Kim Yuna, Corporal Lee Dong-hee. 5 others who had stood in the gap and refused to move. Their bodies were placed in special containers to be sent back to Earth. The survivors gathered in a sheltered part of the canyon. The medical teams worked on the wounded. Commander Vorath sat nearby, staring at nothing. Lieutenant Brix lay on a stretcher, his wounds cleaned and wrapped. Sergeant Major Park Taiho sat against a crystal wall. A medic was working on the burns across his arms and chest. He did not make any sound of pain. He had felt worse before. Vorath finally spoke. His voice was different now. The pride and contempt were gone. I have been a soldier for 300 years. I have fought in 47 battles on 19 different worlds. I thought I understood war. He looked at Taiho. I was wrong. I do not understand anything. Taiho nodded slowly. You are not the first to feel this way. Lieutenant Brix turned his head on the stretcher. His yellow eyes were wide with questions. The way you fought? It was not natural. No species fights like that. When the odds are impossible, creatures run. It is basic survival. But you did not run. None of you ran? No? Why? Brix's voice cracked. Why would you choose death when you could live? Taiho was quiet for a moment. He looked at the crystal walls around them, at the stars visible through the canyon's opening, at the alien soldiers who had watched his team die to save them. You think our stories are fantasies, he said finally. You think they are lies we tell ourselves to feel brave. That is what Commander Vorath said before the battle. That our myths are primitive, delusional. Vorath flinched at his own words being repeated back to him. But you do not understand what stories do. Taiho's voice was tired but strong. On Earth, we were never the strongest creatures. We had no armor like the Kalani, no claws, no scales like the Sorvani. We were soft and small and weak. Any animal on our world could kill us in a fair fight. He leaned his head back against the crystal. But we survived anyway. Do you know how? We created something more powerful than muscles or claws. We created expectations. Private Han Minji had finished getting her wounds wrapped. She sat nearby, listening. Her face was pale, but her eyes were bright. Every human child grows up hearing stories of heroes, Taiho continued. We learn about soldiers who held positions they should have lost. We learn about warriors who fought armies alone. We learn about people who chose death instead of surrender. These stories are told again and again, generation after generation, for thousands of years. He looked at Vorath. You thought these stories were about believing impossible things. You were wrong. They are about becoming impossible things. Brix's translator made a confused sound. I do not understand. Minji spoke up. When I was 6 years old, my grandmother told me about Admiral Yi. He was a naval commander in our history. His country was invaded. His fleet was destroyed. He had only 13 ships left, and the enemy had over 300. She smiled, remembering. Everyone told him to surrender. Everyone told him it was impossible. But he did not listen. He found a place where the water moved fast and strange. He brought his 13 ships there and waited. When the enemy came, their ships crashed into each other. The water pulled them in circles. Admiral Yi destroyed over 100 enemy ships that day. 13 against 300. Vorath made a sound of disbelief. That is impossible. It happened. Minji's voice was firm. It is recorded in our history. We have the documents. We have the evidence. And every Korean child learns this story before they learn to write their own name. Taeho nodded. When Mingi took that plasma burn today, she did not think about dying. She did not think about running. She thought about Admiral Yi. She thought about her grandmother. She thought about the thousands of years of people who stood when standing was impossible. He paused. The stories are not what we believe. They are what we become. Silence filled the canyon. The medical teams had stopped working to listen. Every alien in the area was watching the wounded human with new eyes. Vorith spoke slowly, testing each word like it might break. You condition yourselves. Through narrative, you teach your young that retreat is worse than death, and they believe it so strongly that they cannot retreat, not cannot. Taeho shook his head. Well, not. There is a difference. Every human in that battle could have run. Our legs work fine. But we chose not to, because we would rather be the people in the stories than the people who ran from them. Brix's scales had changed color, turning from green to a soft blue that showed deep emotion in his species. And this is why you survive. This is why your species reached the stars, even though you are physically weak. Yes. Taeho looked at the stasis containers holding his fallen soldiers. You can break a body, Lieutenant. A knife can cut it. A weapon can burn it. But you cannot break a story. You cannot kill an idea. 10,000 years of human heroes are standing behind every human soldier who goes into battle. They are not alone. They are never alone. Commander Vorath stood up slowly. His 4 eyes looked at the fallen humans with something that had not been there before. Respect. I called you primitive, he said quietly. I called your beliefs childish. I was a fool you did not know. I know now. Vorath straightened to his full height. And I will not forget. Your soldiers saved my entire unit today. They gave their lives for people who mocked them. This is a debt that cannot be repaid. Taeho smiled tiredly. Then do not try to repay it. Just remember them. Tell their story. That is all humans have ever asked. The stars shone down on the crystal canyon. Somewhere far away, the families of the fallen humans did not yet know what had happened. But they would learn, and they would be proud, because their children had become the stories they grew up hearing. The news spread. Fast within hours. Every ship in the Alliance fleet knew what had happened on Vera 7. The battle report was read by officers and soldiers of every species. The numbers seemed impossible. 12 humans against over 400 drones. 7 dead, 5 wounded. And every single alien they protected had survived. Within days, the story had reached every inhabited world in the Alliance. Humans everywhere felt a strange mix of pride and sorrow. The fallen soldiers became famous, their faces shone on screens, their names spoken with respect. But the real change happened in places no one expected, Commander. Voreth stood before the Allied Council, the highest military authority in the galaxy. Representatives from all 12 species watched him from their seats. His voice echoed through the great chamber. I formally recommend that the human contingent receive the highest honors available. Their actions at Hollow Ridge saved my entire unit. 31 Kalani soldiers are alive because 12 humans refused to run. He paused. I was wrong about them. We were all wrong. The council voted unanimously. The fallen humans received the Star of Alliance, an honor given only 7 times in galactic history. It was the first time any species had received it on their first combat mission. But medals and honors were not what changed the Galaxy Stories did. 2 weeks after the battle, Lieutenant Brix returned to his homeworld. His wounds had healed, but something inside him had changed forever. He could not forget what he had seen in that canyon. The image of Corporal Dong Hee charging into drones with only a knife. The moment Private Yuna ran into certain death with a smile on her face. The calm voice of Sergeant Major Taeho directing the battle like it was a training exercise. Brix had children. 3 hatchlings who were just learning to read. Every night, they asked him for stories before they went to sleep. He used to tell them old Sorvani tales. Stories of great hunters and clever traders. Safe stories. Boring stories now, he told them something new. Let me tell you about the Battle of Hollow Ridge, he said one night, sitting by their sleeping nests. Let me tell you about 12 humans who taught the galaxy what courage really means. His children listened with wide eyes. They heard about Yuna, who fought with one arm when the other was burned. About Dong-He, who charged death with only a blade. About Taiho, who stood in the center of chaos and never showed fear. The humans have a word, Brix told them. They call it sacrifice. It means giving something precious to protect something more precious. Those humans gave their lives because they believed the lives behind them were worth more. His oldest hatchling looked up at him. Would you do that, Father? Would you sacrifice yourself? Brix thought for a long time. A month ago, he would have said no. Running was logical. Survival was everything. Now, he was not so sure. I hope so, he said finally. I hope that if the moment comes, I will remember the humans. I will remember what they showed me. On Kalani Prime, Commander Vorath did something his species had never done before. He asked a human to teach at their military academy. The Kalani were proud. They believed they had nothing to learn from other species. But Vorath had seen the truth with his own 4 eyes. The human they invited was Sergeant Major Park Taiho. He arrived at the academy wearing simple clothes, his wounds still healing. The young Kalani students looked at him with curiosity. He was so small, so soft. How could someone like him teach them anything? Taiho stood at the front of the classroom. He did not use weapons or technology. He used words. Let me tell you a story, he began, about 300 soldiers who held a narrow pass against an army of 100,000. None of them survived. All of them are remembered. He told them about Thermopylae, about the Korean defenders of Jinju who fought to the last soldier, about men and women throughout human history who chose death over retreat. You are strong, he told the young Kalani. Stronger than humans will ever be. But strength alone is not enough. The Hollow Fleet does not care about strength. They have machines. They have numbers. They will overwhelm any force that fights with only their bodies. He pointed at his own chest. This is where real power lives. Not in muscles. Not in armor. In here. In the stories we carry. In the people we choose to become. Kalani listened. And slowly they began to understand. 2 years later, the Hollow Fleet launched their final attack. They had gathered their forces in secret, built millions of drones, and prepared to destroy the Alliance once and for all. They expected easy victory. They had studied the Alliance species. They knew the Kalani were strong but would retreat when losses became too high. They knew the Sorvani were fast but would run when surrounded. They had calculated exactly how much force was needed to break each species. They had not calculated the humans, and they had not calculated what the humans had taught everyone else. When the Hollow Fleet attacked, they met something unexpected. Kalani warriors who refused to retreat even when their bodies were broken. Sorvani soldiers who sang human war songs as they charged into certain death. Species that had always run were suddenly standing firm, holding positions they should have abandoned. The Hollow Fleet's calculations were useless. You cannot calculate courage. You cannot measure belief. You cannot put a number on the power of a story passed from parent to child. The Alliance won. It was not easy. Many soldiers died. But for the first time in galactic history, the Hollow Fleet was defeated completely. Their machines were destroyed. Their threat ended forever. On Vera 7, the Alliance built a memorial at Hollow Ridge, a simple stone marker with 12 names carved into it. Visitors came from every world to see the place where 12 humans had changed history. At the base of the memorial, there was an inscription. It was written in every language of the Alliance, and in the original Korean spoken by Sergeant Major Taiho when he first proposed it. Or they laughed at our legends. They learned to fear them. Below that, in smaller letters, tell the story. That is how we live forever. Ships came and went from Vera 7 for thousands of years. Empires rose and fell. Species changed and evolved. But the memorial remained. And every night, on countless worlds across the galaxy, parents told their children the story of Hollow Ridge, the story of 12 humans who taught the galaxy to believe in the impossible, the story that became a legend, the legend that changed everything.